First of all, you asked me who I work with. I told you some of the positions and of course industries are varied, but I also want to be working with people who are looking to make improvements, that have a desire to change. Occasionally have done remediation, right? Where there's a problem within an organization, and that can have success. I have a way of working with a client that may be needing to change because they're going to lose their job if they don't. Those cases are harder because you're dealing with hostages, right? People who are only coaching because they have to. And so oftentimes when the pressure's off, they go back to their
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Coaching Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Rexhen, and today's guest is Spencer Horn, a global leadership expert and high-performance team coach who helps executives turn stressed, siloed groups into confident, trusted, result-driven teams. President and CEO of Altium Leadership, Spencer draws on experience as former VP of operations and training firm CEO to deliver measurable culture and performance gains. Clients routinely report communication breakthroughs, tighter alignment, and team performance improvements up to 50%. He's a sought-out after keynote speaker and a host of the podcast Teamwork, A Better Way. He equips leaders with practical tools for accountability, trust, psychological safety, and delegation. And it's a pleasure for me to have him on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Spencer.
Thank you, Reg. And that was great. It was a lot of information. People are probably turning off. It's too much.
Usually, I do tend to give a lot of details at the intro. So for those of us who have listened to the podcast, this is usually what I do. So they're used to it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to be with you.
It's good to have you here. So I want to dive into your coaching business and learn as much as I can from it. Now, I know it's been around for more than 10 years. And so first of all, what inspired you to start Altium Leadership and Coaching? What inspired you to become a coach and then have this as a business?
So a lot of things. There's never just one thing. My mother was an incredible teacher, and I love teaching. Now, teaching is not coaching, but in a way that's helping people to improve and get tools to deal with the challenges that they have. And of course, making a living as a teacher is really, really challenging. So I had the opportunity to start working with a leadership training and development company in 2008. In 2013, I had become the CEO of that company. And I loved what we were doing for leaders and people. And I developed, a coaching program at that company to help doing ongoing transformation, because most of the training and development was very intensive 2.5-day trainings. Well, people would come out of there excited but there was really not a lot of ongoing support unless you came to the next retreat. Coaching is a way to create behavior change over a long period of time, where we were doing this very, very intensely in a very short period of time. And so for some people, that change doesn't always stick. Whereas if you're doing it over a period of time, the chances of change sticking are increased. You put those two together, and it was quite a magical process. I left that company in 2015 to start my own company. And so coaching has just continued to be a part of the offering that I provide. And I know you haven't asked me yet about how I get my clients and all of that, but it's something that really was inspired by my mother and my experience working with this leadership training and development, and just seeing the transformation that can happen with people was so inspiring to me.
That is so interesting. So for those of the ones that are listening right now who might actually need this, how would you describe your ideal client profile? Is there a certain industry, demographic, psychographic, that they have common goals? I talked about it a little bit on the intro as well, but I'm going to let you kind of describe it even better.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a great question. And I find that for many of the people in my industry, that is the professional speaking and coaching industry, they often have a niche where they'll focus on a certain industry where they are bringing in expertise. When it comes to coaching, my belief is you do not have to be an expert in the industry to help executives. And so personally, I'm agnostic. There are certain industries that I seem to have a lot of clients in, but my clients are in government, nonprofit, for-profit, construction, banking, digital marketing. It doesn't matter what the industry is. I find that the problems in the organization are the same. So who am I coaching? Typically, it's executives that are leaders of businesses, nonprofits, government agencies. Some of them are senior managers, and many are emerging leaders. One of the ways that I get clients is I speak to CEO groups all around the United States. My coaching clientele are all over the world. But for these CEO groups, most of them that I've spoken to are in Canada and the United States. And then they have what's called advancing leaders and emerging leaders. And these emerging leaders are people that have been with the organization sometimes for many, many years, and they are now moving into director role positions. And so I coach sometimes people like that, but typically they're more kind of C-suite and executive level folks, or people who are really moving into those positions. That's who I usually coach.
Cool. And how is it like to work with you for these executives that are listening? Is there some sort of a program of a certain length that they go through? I know we talked about coaching the team as well, but how would you describe?
So what I call the executive coaching is one, and that is done, for change to happen, time 6 months to a year. I usually start my offering for 3 months. And that's the initial kind of get things started. You can start to see some improvement within 3 months. I set it up with 12 sessions. Now, is there a program? I have training and development. Those are what I consider to be a program. Coaching, true, is extremely iterative. It's not come into this with all right, someone, this. Of course, we have getting to know them and identifying, what all about them and what their challenges and issues are. But when I go into a coaching session with an executive, my agenda is their agenda. So I don't come in with a program. If they have a certain barrier or a block, then, we'll sit. Coaching is helping people to solve their own problems. And so when you come into that, you have to be able to help them work through that problem. And I may not necessarily know how their manufacturing process or their how they make spaghetti, or how I'm using that as a euphemism, how they make the sausage in their company. But I do know how to move those executives through those challenges. And they're usually 90% of the time people issues that they're having. So I don't come into this with a program per se, other than I am going to be helping them to achieve the goals that they want. And so what I will do is we'll identify what it is they want to get out of coaching. And then my goal is to move them to goal. So now if there is a development issue or a consulting question they have for me, well, that's a different hat. That's not a coaching hat, if that makes sense. And sometimes the wants opinion. I'm like, okay, so here's the thing. This is my opinion. I'm no longer coaching. And I have to be very careful with that. So the programs, if that makes sense, are more training and development and consulting, whereas coaching is, I don't come into that with an agenda or a program.
So you're sometimes doing both, not just coaching.
Sometimes, yeah. But so with my offerings with a client can be, and talk how I develop clients a little bit later, and you can see how they can grow within a company. So not only am I maybe coaching executives, I'm coaching the entire team, or we do training and development. I just came back from last night with one of my clients where I was meeting with the entire executive team, and I'm coaching, the CEO, the owner, and the COO. And then I'm working with the entire executive team on things like training and development. So there's multiple approaches to changing culture and behavior on the team, but it's not just with one or two people. So And there's team coaching, which is a whole nother approach, right? I mean, that's another that I provide as well.
So you mentioned that, and actually this is coming on the podcast so many times, is real change takes time. How do you see that on average for the people that you work with? Like meaningful change obviously does take a lot of time.
How do I see that? Well, first of all, you asked me who I work with. I mean, I told you some of the positions and of course industries are varied, but I also want to be working with people who are looking to make improvements, that have a desire to change, occasionally have done remediation, right? Where there's a problem within an organization, and that can have success. I have a way of working with a client that may be needing to change because they're going to lose their job if they don't. Those cases are harder because you're dealing with hostages, right? People who are only coaching because they have to. And so oftentimes when the pressure's off, they go back to their behavior. I have seen real change, Rexhen, happen in short periods of time through intensive leadership process, which I'm happy to describe. Yet most meaningful change happens, as I said, over time, because you need to be able to have success with taking a new approach. When I go in and teach delegation to CEOs, for example, one of the things that I tell them are the skills that I'm going to teach you are things you already know and are so basic, you wonder why you brought me in to teach you these. The problem that you're going to have is when you put them all together, and it takes an entire mindset change for you to put this together in the way that I'm going to share you, and you'll fail at it. You will fail. And as a result of failing, they'll get frustrated and give up and just keep doing what they've always done. So unless I have the opportunity to work with them over time where they see that there's success when they take that approach, change doesn't always happen. But sometimes, I'm talking about a principle and they don't get it. I'll give you an example. I was coaching a senior executive who was complaining about he has no time. I'm working 17 hours a day and almost hard for him to be able to meet with me to try it. And his phone was ringing while we're coaching. And he's like, and I've been teaching him how to create space for himself, right? And time and like, yeah, whatever. So his phone rang and I said, I want you to answer that phone. And I want you to put it on speaker. And so we had a conversation and I saw exactly what was going on with the conversations. And he was creating his own whirlwind, right? Because he had smart people that he was talking to and telling them what to do, answering all their questions, and making himself indispensable to his team. And sometimes that feels good when we're important and everybody needs us, right? But he was not creating an ownership mindset in the people that he worked with. Instead, he was creating dependence on for everybody to come to him for the answers, which is why he was absolutely crazy and overworked. And he didn't see that in the conversation. But when I saw that conversation or I heard that conversation, I was immediately able to point it out to him. So sometimes what has to happen is we need time for those experiences to come out and they're like, oh, now I get it. And it doesn't always happen in a workshop or a training or a system because people don't always connect with what you're teaching right away until they're in the moment.
Yeah, and there's always these unknown unknowns, right? So you couldn't you could have told him that before and still wouldn't have clicked.
I did actually. I had told him that before, but it wasn't working. It wasn't registering until I'm like, do you see what? Just look at that or review that conversation in your head. This is what you said. And he's like, oh my gosh, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to get now to the point where we talk about how you get your clients. So like marketing wise, what is working really well for you?
So I'm going to preach a little bit here. I, as a coach and a professional speaker, I work with a lot of aspiring coaches and aspiring speakers, and many of them struggle to find clients. And part of it is mindset, Rexhen, is that you have to realize that you do not earn the right to have a coaching client or a speaking audience unless you do business development. It is part of being a coach. It is part of being a business owner. So when you start your coaching business, you are an entrepreneur, you're a business owner. But so many people who are attracted, this is my experience and my opinion, so hopefully I'm not offending anybody, but a lot of people get drawn to this industry because they want to help people, just like I was. And it's a personality in most cases where they are really good at listening and caring. But when it comes to having tough conversations and selling themselves, they struggle at that. And so I have found a couple of ways that I feel like really helps overcome that. Number one, I started speaking in 2009 to generate leads for my business because I didn't have what's called I didn't have a book of business where I could get referrals from. And that's how this leadership company was getting all their business. It was all referral business. And they didn't know how to do any other lead generation. I didn't have that luxury. I feel like, okay, if I'm being a content creator, if I'm going out and speaking to audiences, I stand in front of potential decision makers. And instead of selling them, I'm teaching them in a very powerful way, creating credibility. And if I do that in an effective way, I'm actually pulling leads. I'm creating a magnet where people come to me and say, hey, I have that problem. Can I talk to you about it? And so speaking was a way to create a brand and an expertise that was able to draw clients. There's a tech expert by the name of Josh Linkner, Linkner, I believe, Josh Linkner. And he had a sales team that he was spending about $1 million a month on. He replaced that with just speaking on stages where they pay him about $30,000 an hour. And then he speaks on stages, and it just is a huge lead generation tool for his business. I found the same is true. Every time I get on a stage, I get clients, I get other speaking opportunities. So that's one of the first ways that I to generate leads. But you cannot just stand up and speak. I mean, speaking it takes time to develop that as a skill. And then there's many ways to do that. There's associations all over the world. You've got the Global Speakers Federation. You've got different, you're in Albania. There are, there's the Speakers Federation. There's the Italian. There's the, Indian, wherever you are in the world.
You got the Toastmasters too?
What's that?
Is that a Toastmasters in?
No, it's different than Toastmasters. So let me explain the difference. Toastmasters is really about public speaking. Okay. Giving, for example, a toast or, talking about research, these speakers associations that I'm referring to are about professional speaking. The difference is public speaking you usually do for free. Professional speaking is you're doing that for a fee. So not only am I getting paid to speak, but I'm generating leads for my consulting business that way. So that's one of the first ways that I do that. I use to reach out and to connect with people. I use several AI tools to do research, to find contact information where it's not really cold outreach where I am really nurturing relationships online. During the 2020 pandemic, I cold outreach. I actually hired a firm through LinkedIn to start reaching out to people on LinkedIn, connecting with people, and they would set up appointments just to have call it a consultation or a discovery call. And these 15 minutes in length. And what I would do is I had this system to really help me create contacts into prospects, into leads. And I would spend most of my time just getting to know them. Tell me about business. How is the current economic condition impacting your business? When you started this company, whatever they told me 10 years ago or 5 years ago, what was your original vision? And how's it going today compared to what you originally thought? Are you where you thought you would be? What's preventing you from having that success? And I'm having a conversation. People usually are open. They want to talk about themselves, and I'm using their time as quickly as I can, like I say, in a short conversation. And so I asked them, so what you're saying is you need more of people like Rexhen on your team and less of people like so-and-so on your team. Yeah, I need some of those. So would it be of benefit if I could help you to find Rexhens or, and they say, well, yeah, absolutely. I say, well, listen, what could I tell you about me? And I spend the last 5 minutes just telling them a little bit about how I work with people. And I say, you know what I'd love to do if you're willing. I can show you how to find more Rexhens. But before I do that, what I'd like to know is it possible that part of the problems that you're having in your business is that you're part of the problem? And that you have to be bold to be able to ask that, right? And if they're not willing to admit that, then they're probably not going to be a client. And if they're like, that's possible. So I said, here's what I'd love to do. If you'd be willing to take 5 to 10 minutes to take a leadership and communication survey. I will spend time with you and reviewing those results, and we will pinpoint where your strengths are and where you might be having some blind spot that could be contributing to these problems of not being able to keep the great people like Rexhen on your team or attracting more of them. Would you be willing to do that? And that's where I send them a link to my leadership behavioral survey. Literally takes them, because they're super busy. They don't want to spend a half an hour or 45 minutes taking assessment. They take this survey, takes them 5 to 10 minutes. And then I hold on to that results. They don't get the results. The only way that they get the results, Rexhen, is if they have a conference call with me. And on Zoom, I will go through their results. And it's a report that I've generated because I have that ability, 18 pages of data. I spend an hour with them. And by the time we're done, they're slobbering over, oh my gosh, could you do this for my team? Could you do this for? And it's a tool that I can then use to help coach them. But I give that away. So I'm, if you will, wood in the fire, right? To generate interest. I am investing time up front for free. That's my demo, if you will. And it creates credibility almost instantly. And from there, that's where I'll get clients, coaching clients, consulting, training, speaking opportunities, all kinds of things.
Yeah, that makes it way easier conversion-wise at that point, because you're doing a lot of the heavy work on building trust earlier on before they and after they have on the call, they are to join. They've qualified. Actually, they're qualified because there's a few questions that you've asked them on the messages before. So it's like they're getting pre-qualified, and then they're meeting with you, and there's a lot of value there.
I also have what's called a team diagnostic that I use through a company called Team Coaching International. And because I'm, certified through there, I'm able to provide a free version of that for them to kind of do an assessment on teams internally. And that's a great way as well to show off your expertise and talk to them about what to have a high performing team. But they are the ones that take the survey to assess their team. And then you go through those results with them together, and almost automatically they're like, okay, I see what's going on. And now they know how you can help them. So you're demonstrating competence, right away. That's what people want to know. There are a couple things. Can I trust you? And are you competent? And trust always comes first, right? I mean, so often as coaches, we want to sell our competence first. And so when I'm talking to a prospect, I'm not talking about me, right? That's pushing my competence. I'm building trust by being curious and asking them questions and listening and being sincere. And when you have that level of trust, then the opportunity to demonstrate your competence is increased. And that order, trust versus competence, goes all the way back to caveman days, right? I mean, if I come to you in the Neanderthal days and try to sell you on how good I am at building fire, you don't know if I'm going to kill you and steal your wife and sell your children into slavery. So I don't have the right to skills to you unless you trust me first.
Absolutely. So right now with your coaching business, where are you headed for the next 1 to 3 years? Do you have any specific business goals that you're working towards?
Oh, I do. I have actually on buying a company that's a coaching company, and we are looking to expand, to provide certifications. And just because this is a company that I love and admire. And so for me, not only am I a coach, but, an entrepreneur. And I have, I've seen the benefits of this company. So I'm looking at ways to expand my offering and provide to coaches because that's the next thing, right? And that's, a one-on-one. The problem is that we only have so much time and so much inventory. Our inventory is our time, our hours in the day. And so you basically limit the amount of income that you can make as a coach unless you're able to scale. And one of the ways to scale is team coaching, coach multiple at once to create peer groups. But then how do you coach entire companies? And so I can increase my fees, my revenue by working with executive teams, not just one executive at a time.
Mm-hmm. So right now, is that something, because we were talking about that example where we have the CEO, COO, and I don't know if the owner or the CEO was the same person, but I was thinking weren't there two executives or already?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. So, well, in that scenario, I'm able to create that are 2-year-long proposals. So now I have sustainability in my business where I have ongoing revenue. And then what's interesting in it's anyway, there are some programs, and I don't know if there are these similar programs internationally, but in the United States, there are programs that actually help companies pay them to train their employees. So I can go to my client and say, listen, here are my fees, $50,000, $100,000 for the year, but 40% of this can be covered by this agency. All you have to do is apply here. And that way they're so much more comfortable in saying, yeah, well, I'm going to sign that deal right away. There are those programs that help you to get bigger and not be afraid to ask for them.
Interesting. I haven't thought about it that way. So that is good insight. Thanks for bringing
So
that.
like here in Utah, for example, it's called Custom Fit. And if you look up Custom Fit, it's actually done through community colleges, but there are millions of dollars that are, so the schools themselves on training, and they charge businesses to their employees through that. But in the same way, they actually will reimburse companies for outside experts to come, whether it's coaching or training that you provide to their companies. They can get 35 to 40% of that covered by these grants.
Interesting. So right now, when thinking about your goals, like expanding the offering, the reason why I mentioned what I was saying earlier is like I thought that you are already like working with sometimes multiple executives at the same time.
I am.
Okay, so that is not going to be a new thing. It's just going to be something that
but I'm gonna be with a team of people, and that's my team is small now, and so we're gonna grow and we're gonna scale. That's the goal.
So would you say you're finding challenges in growing and scaling now? Is it in like hiring? Is it?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that I have done over the years. I have outsourced my virtual assistants, if you will, internationally. And I have found there's so many agencies out there that are doing that now. I've used many. I had a virtual assistant in the Philippines for 5 years that I worked with, and that was super helpful. She would be doing outbound email marketing for me. Now there are agencies that are managing all of that for you. So I have people I use a sophisticated contact management system like Go High Level. I've used, oh my gosh, so many of them. Zoho based tool. I've also used, what's the one out of Massachusetts? The HubSpot. I've used that. And these are heavy tools. And I've tried to find tools that are very cost effective, because when you're a small organization, you can really start spending a lot of money. That's why I went away from HubSpot, because it was so expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm currently using Go High Level. So to create funnels, now I'm talking about marketing funnels. There are ways to do that in some of these that are where you can put on webinars, for example, for free, but market to those webinars and get people to your webinar, and then get an offering in the webinar. But that takes so much time and energy. And if, for me as a coach to have to figure out how to create these funnels it's exhausting. And so I have found that there are companies that I can pay literally $10 an hour to create. And I've done it through Upwork, where people know how to work with certain CRMs. I just hire them to create this. But now I'm looking at a company based in Los Angeles, and I forget the name. I mean, I wasn't prepared to tell you what that was, but I just interviewed them with this other owner, and I'm really thrilled. I think that they have a great system, and I'm going to use them to help me scale team without spending a lot of money on payroll. Okay. So I'm a firm believer of outsourcing and finding people to do what you're not good at for a small fee. And for some people internationally, that they're happy because they're making more than they would in their country. I can't afford to hire somebody for $30 an hour here in this country. So to me, it's a win as a small business. So I outsource that, and that's one of the ways we're going to grow until we get to a place where we can actually hire full-time directors of business development, whatever. We do obviously hire coaches from all around the world. We're bringing on coaches to a program. You can't outsource that expertise, but things like technical, organization, accounting, just all the back office stuff, running your CRM, all of that, you need help if you're really running a business. And that's what I do. Also marketing. I mean, so here's a couple of things that I've also tried. There's so many people that are trying to take advantage of speakers and coaches because they know that they all suck at doing business development. There's a huge industry that's all growing around providing leads for coaches and speakers. And some of it is done for you. Some of them are, you only pay them if the lead closes, which is not bad, but they take a big chunk of your revenue. Others, I've tried them all, and you have to be good at closing. You have to have a system of being able to onboard clients. And if you don't, doesn't matter how many leads you get. If you're not good at closing people, you're going to struggle.
Yeah. And you get better by just having more calls, basically.
You do, but again, many people will avoid having calls. So that's why I say you have to have the mindset that you're an entrepreneur and that you've got to every single day have business development sales calls every day. And you've got to make it a muscle that you develop.
Absolutely. So basically outsourcing and hiring, not a challenge for you. And I'd like to maybe after this podcast, figure out what that $10 company is so I can look it up for myself as well. Where would you say is, that's okay. Take your time with that. Like, where would you say is the main bottleneck for you right now? If it's not outsourcing, is there would you say that the bottleneck is somewhere else?
No, the main bottleneck for me, having somebody create these tools for me, automation. I use lots of AI. I have a podcast. I can produce my podcast so easily, so quickly, create show notes. I don't have an outside producer to do that, so it saves a ton of money. I use Ecamm and I use, Stream Deck and A10. I've got a whole studio that I literally run while I'm having guests come in. So tools have been, just a savior for me because they save so much time in front end and back end. So now what I need is someone to really help me get to the next level of automation for my database marketing, utilizing the database I have. I'm not doing that well. So that's an opportunity for me right there. And then I need help with that because I'm busy enough, and traveling and coaching that when I'm doing that, I'm not doing the business development. So that's where you get the peaks and valleys that happen every time for a small business. That's the challenge of an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So you're still basically even now doing outreach.
Yeah, I am.
From COVID till now, continuously doing it.
Yeah, and I can show you spreadsheets how I do it. Like I will, I'll search for associations, for example, that I've been speaking at for years. As a matter of fact, I'm coming close to you. As I told you, I'll be flying to Athens, and then specifically, I'm speaking in Bulgaria on the 22nd and 23rd of October. I have an audience of 700 people. Then I'm doing a communications workshop. But that opportunity came from me personally doing outreach on LinkedIn. And I have a spreadsheet of prospects that I work, some outreach. And then when people respond, then I put them into my contact management system. Then when I speak to audiences, I have a way of capturing leads. I ask for feedback. I do a QR code and I ask for feedback. And in my tool that I use, it's called Talkadot. It's a third-party tool. They give me feedback. They give me testimonials, and they say if they have opportunities for me to lead. So it's a gold mine of generation that I have. So I have lots of things going on. I keep thinking of them as we're talking. So you can just have one way of generating leads. You got multiple.
Yeah, you cannot put all the eggs in one basket. So that makes sense.
Exactly.
So beautiful. And right now, for all the coaches who are listening, is there any final advice you'd like to give to these coaches who are trying to scale their impact as a coach?
Yeah, you've got to invest, right? You can't just, if you want to grow fast, you have to leverage capital. I mean, you need three things to run a business. You need capital, you need a great product, and you need a market. You need somebody who needs your services. You can be successful with two of those. I started my business 10 years ago with zero capital. I had no money in the bank, but I had a great product and I had people that I felt like needed it. And so I was able to successfully start a business. It doesn't scale unless you're able to invest. And there are programs, certainly here in the United States, I don't know what it's like internationally, but that are, small business administration. There's investors. I don't love the investment route. Venture capital is challenging because you don't control it, but things like Small Business Administration has great loans, and you can leverage that. You just got to be really smart about how you apply it. Put that into business development. Any money that you leverage, you've got to generate revenue as possible, and you got to have a business. Listen, if you're a coach, you started this because you wanted freedom, but that doesn't come until you generated an organization that works with you, and that's going to take a lot of work.
Absolutely. And yeah, thank you so much, Spencer, so much for coming to our podcast. For anyone who wants to connect with you or find you, they can go into, first of all, LinkedIn, look up Spencer Horn. They can also go into altiumleadership.com, which is the website, and we'll put also that in the link in the description so people can find it easily. Is there any other way people can connect with you or reach out to you?
The absolute best way is on LinkedIn. Found that company for the hiring. It's called, I'm putting it in the address in the chat right now.
So global-hires.
Global Hires. Yeah. It's Interstaff. Interstaff is the name of the company. Global Hires. Yeah. global-hires.com.
Cool. So for anyone who's listening that was following this conversation, that's where you'll find them.
Yeah. And then if you want to see, my team coaching tool, like it's called a team diagnostic, here's a QR code. You're welcome to scan that QR code. And I've given them the link if you're listening to test it out. And I will go through it with you and show you how this tool works and how it can help you generate business for your coaching business. But it's through Team Coaching International. That's not my company, but a tool I use that I absolutely love. So there's that.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much, Spencer. Thank you so much for coming to the podcast today. It was a pleasure to have you on the show.
Rexhen, great to be with you. And thank you for the opportunity to...
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.